Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now this is a momentous occasion. We're coming back around after about 6 months roughly of the time since my last tier list video. And that means that I'm going to be making another tier list video. Now, I zoomed this in a little bit more so you guys didn't have to see the ads. I'm currently actually live streaming this recording, but I'm not looking at chat for this portion of it. I'm just going to be recording my placements and how I'm thinking all the Pokemon should be ranked. And then I'm going to do a second portion of this. That's going to be a part 2 to it, where I'm going to have chat open. I'm going to be interacting with chat. If you want to see that, I'll have that linked in the description. It's going to be 2 separate videos I'm going to be uploading at the same time. So if you are interested in seeing how people might be able to sway my thoughts, then see that portion as well. But this is probably going to be a pretty long video. I don't intend to be I don't be intending to edit it at all. It's just going to be me going through ranking every Pokemon. Now, when it comes to ranking them, there are a couple things that I want to address. First thing, this is all just subjective to an extent. I'm going to be trying to take a bit of an objective approach and ranking them based off of strength for most players, but ultimately, my experience is going to be very different from other people's experience, and what's necessarily good in my mind might not necessarily be what's good for your account. So consider what works with your box, what works best for you, before just taking my advice as this is the best, invest this. That's not really the point of this. It's more just to say what I think is generally strong. But I also wanted to address, there are a couple different ways you could evaluate how good a Pokemon is in this game. First, you could just simply evaluate how strong it is in a vacuum. Like, both, let's say, multiple Pokemon can do the same sort of job. Like, Dragonite and Gengar can produce herbs, which means both of them are kind of dependent upon the strength of herbs in the meta, and that can lead to them having very similar rankings if we just rank them in a vacuum, even if one is better than the other. The other way you could do is by evaluating how it compares to other Pokemon in the meta, and say what is the opportunity cost in regards to what could be alternatively used. And then another way is by evaluating potential return on investment, because some Pokemon cost more than others. We look towards the 16 pip Pokemon and the legendaries as being like the prime examples of the ones that have some of the worst return on investment. And for the purposes of this video, I'm generally going to be considering just strength in a vacuum. I think it's probably one of the easiest ways to evaluate, but I might every now and then bring in some slight considerations for ranking compared to other options in the game. Because there are some things that are just like strictly better, so that makes it a bit more difficult to justify using something unless you stumble into a very good one with very good sub-skills. If you have one of those Pokemon, don't think that it's bad, because it might be good if you have the right sub-skills in nature. But overall, I'm going to be making some considerations for opportunity cost. But overall, it's still just ultimately my opinion, and there really is no great way of just ranking every Pokemon in this game, because there are so many potential opportunities, and something might work better for your box than what works better for mine, so consider that before going into this. But let's just hop right into it. Now, I also did want to disclose that I'm considering what is strongest as of today, June 24th of 2025. There are many potentially game-changing things coming out in just a few weeks to a month that could seriously shift how all of this looks. Most notably, Expert Mode potentially could change a lot of Pokemon's rankings and viabilities, just because we don't know what it looks like yet. I'm not going to be considering Expert Mode for the purposes of this tier list, because we don't know what Expert Mode looks like. So I'm not going to be making any assumptions about that. New meals could also get released that could power creep old meals, and then put some Pokemon to be less useful because you're trying to make just the stronger meals. Not going to be considering that. I'm going to be using the dishes that exist today, because that's the only information that we have. The anniversary event also could bring more options that could power creep old options, which once again, we don't know what those options are, so it's best to just go off what is best today. If you're watching this 4 months down the road, this could look wildly different as well. So that's why I intend to do another one in like December or January time. Again, I want to be updating this tier list like once every 6 months or so. So this is just for today, June 24th of 2025. So now that I've gotten all those disclosures out of the way, let's hop right into it. First Pokemon we're going to be looking at is Venusaur. Now, Venusaur, it's primarily known for honey. It can also produce tomatoes. Oh, I just realized my face is in a terrible spot for this. I'll move it up so you guys can actually see what's coming up next. But anyway, Venusaur is a honey producer. Honey right now, if we take a look at the dishes in the game... Oh man, this is going to be fun swapping back and forth between this. Oh man, I'm going to move my face up a little bit more. This is the benefits of doing it all live. Honey right now is in some of the top meals, so it's actually in a lot of the top meals, so getting a lot of honey reliably is pretty powerful. I think that we could probably... If you get a good one that produces plenty of honey for your needs... Now, I think it's probably going to go... Honestly, I'm going to put it firmly in A tier. Now, the way that I've defined these in the past, I should kind of mark it off. So, I put in S tier, I said was game-changing. So, like, access to a good one is going to ultimately change your experience in the game. A is going to be generally good. I should establish that as well. B, good with right... I'd say good with right stats. I think this is the, well, A is good with right stats as well. Good if... good if caught one with great stats. That's what we'll say. And then C is niche application, but strong and niche. And then D is just meh. And then we'll also add an F tier, and we'll add another one later. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Let's see. We'll add another tier here. How do I... Add Robolo, there we go. And this one's going to be, like, bad. We'll make it gray. And it's F. That's just don't. No. Okay. So yeah, Venusaur, solidly A tier. I don't think it's ultimately going to change your game to get a Venusaur, but it produces a lot of honey, which is useful in a lot of the top meals. If you have all the other producers for those ingredients, then it's definitely going to change your game because you have access to those new meals. But I think a lot of non-ingredient specialists produce honey that can supplement and you can stockpile, so I don't think it's going to be changing your game. I feel very similarly about Charizard as well, who produces the sausage is like his primary thing. Now, sausage, it's on a lot of berry specialists as well, and a lot of ingredient specialists is like B and C ingredients. There also is Aggron, who's a better sausage farmer, but not by much. But they're almost the same for productivity for sausage. Ginger can be pretty good, and it kind of synergizes with the sausage pretty well. But overall, I think I'm going to put it in A tier. I think Blastoise with Cacao is probably the strongest of the three Gen 1 starters. I think Venusaur is a little bit better than Charizard right now. But Blastoise with Cacao and Milk, two pretty synergistic ingredients. It's the best producer of milk by a long shot. And a solid Cacao farmer as well. Once again, I don't think any of them are ultimately game-changing if you catch them, because a lot of their stuff can be produced and supplemented by berry specialists. But I'd say generally a strong option. Now, we're taking a little bit of a step back from a solid start with the Kanto starters, going to Butterfree. I'm going to put it in C tier. Honestly, okay, right now, D tier. Because it doesn't have an island yet. If it had an island, I'd put it here safely, but as of right now, it doesn't have an island, and that's another thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about the future updates that could change things. As of right now, meh. I mean, it's a berry specialist. It's great for early game. but it's not really great long term. Raticate, I'd say solidly C tier as well. Similar in right of Butterfree, it's not good, but hey, at least it does all right at Snowdrop. So C, it's just kind of mid. Well, but Walrein is a lot better for it, and so is... You know what? No, I'm putting it down in meh. I'll put it below Butterfree. Because Raticate, it's so outclassed by other options for Snowdrop that are cheap. That are pretty cheap and easy to hunt. So I can't really give it even the niche application. And same sort of thing as Butterfree. Arbok is, I believe it's worse than Raticate right now, as far as raw strength goes. And it doesn't have an island, so it's definitely just worse. Halloween Hat Pikachu, definitely niche. It really only has an application on Raikou teams, otherwise it's just a strict downgrade from Raichu. So unless you have a Raikou team and need the multiple electric types bonus, it's not useful at all. Santa Hat Pikachu, no. That's just... Dream Shard Magnet is a very niche skill to begin with. You only really want to use it on off weeks. It's a niche skill, and it's the worst producer for that niche skill. And it uses your Pikachu candy, which should easily be going towards a Raichu instead. So, I'm putting it confidently in F tier. And I don't think anyone really has a complaint about that one. If you have a great one, and you like how cute it is, go for it. But know that it's an intentionally bad investment because you're doing it for style points. Raichu is next. Now, those of you that have been following the channel for a long time, you'll know that I have a phenomenal experience with Raichu. It's one of the strongest berry specialists at the strongest island. Well, as of right now, the strongest island with the old gold power plant. And it's got a pretty good ingredient list with the apples. Granted, apples are a weaker ingredient, but they're used in a lot of meals. And it has it with ginger, so if you make the Zing Zap combo, then that's pretty solid. But that's pretty rare, so if I'm being honest with myself, while that's been game-changing for my account, most people probably won't have that experience. But I'd still say that it's probably a really solid ingredient list. Even for desserts in general, no matter which one you get, the apples, the ginger, or the eggs. But the real thing that you're looking at is berries, and for berries, it is, by a long shot, going to be one of the best that you can catch for Old Gold Power Plant. There's Steelix as well, later on, who's arguably better in some ways, but Raichu is just so easy to level as well. I said I wasn't really considering return on investment, but I think that just for my own personal experience, I have to put it up in S tier because it has been game-changing for me. And I think if a lot of people catch great ones, I think any of the basic berry specialists in the game, if you catch a really good berry specialist, it's game-changing. Especially for those ones that are the top tiers. And I guess that's minor spoilers for future rankings, but I think that almost all the top tier berry specialists for their individual islands is going to be game changing for you because it just will massively improve your performance at that island specifically. But they need to be the top tier berry specialist for their given island. Clefable? Yeah, Clefable I'm going to put down solidly in meh. It's better than like these other options, and it does have an island. But ultimately, it's not great. It's not a great berry specialist. It's got a weird skill. Metronome is fun, but ultimately not that useful. It's just kind of a fun gamble. I like Ninetales, but it is a lot more... It's not as good as Typhlosion is the big problem with Ninetales, and it's got kind of a weird ingredient list to really make it use, and weird skill for a berry specialist that oftentimes just doesn't even get considered because a lot of players, if you're using meta play, you will be using energy for everyone, which means you don't really need all that much energy for the rest of the team. It can provide some nice spot heals, so I'm going to put it in C, but overall you're not using it for the main skill because it's so low on its main skill proc. And if you're looking at it just for berries, which it is a berry specialist, which is the primary thing that it's doing, Typhlosion is just better. So I'm putting it solidly down in C. Alolan Ninetales, on the other hand, I feel like is one of the most slept-on Pokemon in the game currently. I think the big problem with Alolan Ninetales is that it is phenomenal. It's great. One of the best berry specialists. If not, I think there's a case to be had that it is the best berry specialist in the entire game. I think there's a case to be had there for it. The problem with it is it's at Snowdrop pretty much exclusively unless it's a holiday event going on, which ultimately makes it that usually players will get a Walrein before going to Snowdrop because Spheal spawns pretty commonly at Cyan, which is a lot of where like you go early game to build up and get a Walrein, so that you have one ready to go for Snowdrop. So by the time you get there, you already have an Ice Berry Specialist. So it's not really a big hunt that a lot of people are looking for when they get there because they already have its role covered. But I think if you were to get the Alolan Ninetales instead, I think it's easily one of the best berry specialists in the entire game. I'm actually going to put it above Raichu because its skill is also one of the most synergistic for a Berrymon as well. Because one of the biggest problems with Extra Helpful S is that it can proc on itself. At least on a skill specialist. Which then just gives you one of each berry, or one berry of each for each help. Which just hurts. Even if you have Berry Fighting S, that's still 2, which is not terrible, but it's a bit off, but then you're sacrificing skill triggers. I would much rather see that skill on a berry specialist, and then have it so that if it does proc on itself, it just increases the value of what the skill can provide. And it's also an ice type, which has a stronger base value berry, makes it more powerful. So I'm putting it solidly up in S tier right alongside the Raichu. And now we get to Wigglytuff. Here's where, if you watch my last tier list video, this will not surprise you. I'm actually going to add another tier above this. And it's just going to be labeled E4E. And that is because Energy for Everyone... Oh, what? What is going on? Okay, there we go. Energy for Everyone is so tremendously good in this game. And so much of a centralizing game mechanic that I struggle to even rank them. Because you just need one. Like, it's mandatory if you are trying to play optimally. If you're trying to play for Snorlax strength. You can do well without it if you really, really team build around it and have a lot of self-healers, energizing cheer. But it's just so much easier and very game-changing in a way, just having access to E4E. But the problem is they all kind of... I'd rank them all similar strength. Some are better than others in their own ways, but they all ultimately do the same thing, which is provide reliable energy to the team. And... they exist outside the tier list because it's not like it's going to change. You just need it if you're going to play optimally. So I'm putting them in their own rank above it because they kind of just exist outside the tier list of like mandatory if you want to optimize. Dugtrio. This is where ground types get it hard in this game. Solidly meh. I mean, leeks are very strong. Tomatoes don't have great synergy with leeks, though. There's not a whole lot of meals that have leeks and tomatoes, if any, at all. So, it's just very meh. I'll put it, I don't know, right there. Yeah, well, if Arbok gets an island, it's higher than Dugtrio, but as of right now, I'll put it below Dugtrio. Persian, no. It's... the only reason why it's above Holiday Hat Pikachu, these are like in the same world of being that bad. The only thing that Persian has going for it that Holiday Hat Pikachu doesn't have going for it is that at least Persian has its own candy. This guy will steal your Pikachu candies that could be going for this guy. So, yeah, just no. Golduck, I think... so, it's a generalist. It's Charge Strength S. Very, very good at what it does. It's certainly... if you manage your account and remember to check it quite often, it is the best generalist in the game. My only problem with generalists is... so, early game, they're game-changing. I will say that. But I'm kind of looking at this tier list from the mindset of a player who has level 65 Pokemon, the mindset of late game play. So not really considering early game niches. Early game, this dude is S tier. Literally one of the best investments you can get right at the start of the game. Arguably even better early game than Energy for Everyone, despite how centralizing Energy for Everyone is. But late game, as you get more berry specialists with favored berry, and you have more ingredient specialists that you're rotating for powerful meals or trying to run to get high amounts of ingredient coverage, the need for a generalist decreases over time. So it's not that it's bad. I would just say generally good. It's good, but what its role isn't really needed late game, ideally. And theoretically, if you get a berry specialist high enough, it should be at least okay at a generalist role. So the few times that you do need a generalist, you can probably do it with a berry specialist. That's why I don't think it's quite game-changing here. I know I'm probably going to make some people mad with this ranking, but I'll put it in A. I don't think it's quite S tier. Just generally good. It's a generalist, so it's the definition of generally good. Primeape. Now, Primeape, I'll put it there. I mean, it's a pretty decent berry specialist, but it's kind of in a weird spot because it's basically just a strictly worse Meganium. Meganium is very, very good, but this is one that's definitely hurt by the fact that it's just that there's like no reason to use a Primeape over Meganium other than you have one with good stats, which is the case for me. I've got a shiny with really good stats. But overall, the species, if you in a vacuum had a Meganium and a Primeape with the same subskills and nature, 95% of the time you'll just pick the Meganium unless for some reason you need like mushrooms because it produces that. A little bit of them. So, and that's like the only way that it's better than Meganium is if you need its ingredients. And it is worse enough that I wouldn't even really put it into generally good. Just go for a Meganium. I think Mankey is more common, but it's not really a great Pokemon overall. And it only gets one evolution, so it only gets one free skill level, and you don't really want to be investing skill seeds into a berry specialist. So, unless it's an all-timer for you. So, and Primeape's not going to be good enough to do that. So that's why I put it down in B tier. Good if caught one with great stats. Arcanine. Now, Arcanine fills a niche. So, niche application. It's very good at that. Oh, whoops. I grabbed the wrong guy. Arcanine's very good at its niche application. And I think it's a more common niche than Halloween Hat Pika. So I'll put it there. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna put Cantonian Ninetales a little bit higher. Halloween Hat Pika is not that good. So, but I do think Arcanine's niche is a bit better than what Ninetales is trying to do, so yeah, that's what I'll do. Victory Bell. We're getting the first of Tomato Land. It is one of the better tomato... As far as the Tomatomons go, we've got really like Luxray, Victory Bell, and Mr. Mime... Or not Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime's a little bit worse than the others. Luxray, Victory Bell, and Abomasnow. All three of them produce almost exactly the same amount of tomatoes. Like, it's within 1%. So as far as it goes, I mean, tomatoes are in Hidden Power Perk Up Stew, which is one of the top dishes right now. Here, I'll zoom out here. Hidden Power Perk Up Stew. It's also an apple acid yogurt dressed salad, so there are some decent recipes with it. As for potatoes, because it can have that as a secondary option, you have Defiant Coffee Dressed Salad, so it's got some ingredients that are in some of the more top-tier, higher-end meals. So I think that's pretty consistent, but there are so many tomato options that it's difficult to justify any one in particular, just whichever one you get with great stats. So I'm going to put it solidly in B tier. Because if you catch it, and that's your Tomatomon, that's your Tomatomon. But there's so many options for Tomatomons that they all are just kind of... Whichever one you catch with the good stats first fills that role is the one that you settle on. And then you might use the other options for some other stuff. Even Dugtrio makes tomatoes. It's just not very good at it. Sorry. Gotta stay hydrated, people. Okay, Golem. Golem is the best for soybeans, hands down. There's no questions about... Well, okay, Tyranitar can kind of outproduce it with the ABB list, but that's kind of a more niche thing. Soybeans right now are really just in Perk Up, and a little bit in Ninja Salad and Ninja Curry as well. But I think there are better Pokemon for those two, since there's some synergy there with the soybeans and the leeks particularly. So I think if those are the meals you're targeting, there's a better Pokemon for that, which we'll get to way later. So Golem's really just kind of targeting Hidden Power Perk Up and maybe stockpiling the soybeans for these other ones. But soybeans have kind of fallen off a little bit. The Ninja Meals are not nearly as high as what they once were. They're still pretty powerful, I feel like, if you can create them with a limited number of team members. But they're still not going to be reaching the highest of high strengths like these new meals are with the coffee or the apple acid or the Clodsire Eclairs. Like, these ones are just, like, flooring the old options by quite a bit, almost over double the strength. So that makes it... It's still good. I think there's still strong options, just not as strong comparatively as what they once were. So while before, I think I ranked this guy S tier in my last one. I'm going to put him again in generally good. I think soybeans are a bit less favorable in the meta right now than bean sausage and honey, but I think so many things make bean sausage, whereas honey's a bit more limited. So I'm going to rank him in between Venusaur and Charizard. Okay, Slowbro. Slowbro's, it's got a niche application, and that's finding tails, but it's not really that great at it. It just kind of does it a little bit. But its niche isn't even that strong, so... It's between bottom... It's like right on the line of C and D tier for me. I'm gonna put it at bottom of C tier, because it does at least have a niche in finding tails. And that's what all I will really say about that, but it's not even a tail finder. It's not even an ingredient specialist. It's a skill specialist. And the skill that it has is kind of irrelevant on skill specialist, because E4E is so good that there really is no reason to invest in Energizing Cheer Skillsmon. Farfetch'd. Now, this is the one that I was awaiting to make this video for, because I knew it was coming out relatively soon. And Farfetch'd is definitely one of the best leak finders in the game. Now, this is one where I give a bit of a warning. It is a 16-pip Pokemon, and this is where the first... I believe it's the first one where the 16-pip problem comes into play. It's way more expensive than all the other options, than 5-pip options. And that makes it a bit more difficult to justify investment or a long-term hunt for. But when evaluating for just raw strength, I can't not put it in S tier. It's a lot of leaks that it makes, and even if you don't go for the leaks, the ginger in the leaks has great synergy. If we go back to this infographic again, Zingzab Spice Cola. Get a good Skeledirge or lots of Raichus for the apples to make berries while making the apples. Get yourself a V-Volt. You don't even need that much. You can just stockpile the coffee. You don't even need to run a V-Volt, because 12 isn't that many for stockpiling for the course of a week. And you can make Zingzap. It's a decent amount weaker than the Clodsire Eclairs, but if you're making this with 2 to 3 Pokemon, this is very, very powerful. If you have the C-list. I'm not saying invest in it for a C-list, but if you catch one with good ones, the AA C-list, you can even just use it as the AA leaks, realistically, and then maybe take it all the way to that C if you find something else for leaks, if you want it for that synergy. Otherwise, it's got sausage, which is interesting for the new Sukiyaki Curry. It's a mediocre sausage producer, but even in the non-mono options, almost all of its lists are great, except for ABC. Like, almost every list has some sort of viability. But obviously the mono list is going to be the most powerful by a long shot in this case. You probably want it to be the mono list. I think there's potential in other lists, and a lot of players aren't really noticing that. But the only one that I really wouldn't want would probably be ABC. But all the lists are good in some capacity. And if you do land that very highly sought-after mono option, it is just so many leaks that it will seriously step up your game for any of these leak meals, which are some of the strongest. Especially with... It also gives you a great filler option, because leeks are the second strongest ingredient in the game. So after Tails, which Tails are very, very difficult to farm a lot of. Okay, so now the real question is it below or above Raichu? I don't think it's above Alola Tails. You know what, here's where my personal biases come into play. I'm going to leave Raichu just a little bit higher. It's really difficult with Farfetch'd because it hasn't been around for long enough to really see how it shakes things up. So this is a bit more speculative because it's only been out for like 2 days. But I'm putting it there for now. Now Dodrio. Dodrio, I think, has some potential. Very similar to Primeape. It's not strictly worse than Feraligatr. It's arguably even worse than like the comparison between Primeape and Meganium, because it doesn't have the same skill. It's got an arguably worse skill, being Self-Recharge, which is kind of a dull skill on berry specialists. It doesn't really help them that much because you're not really looking to rotate berry specialists off that much, so you don't really need them to be as energized consistently so that you can rotate them. So it's kind of a bum skill, but it's still pretty good at producing flying type berries. So I'll put it solidly in B. It's not great, but if you get one with amazing stats, it might be worth investment. Gengar. Gengar I think can be generally good. It's a bit more difficult to use because it's not really great for herbs, it's not really great for mushrooms. It's pretty good for ghost berries. Well, but it's not really amazing at any one particular role. It's kind of just a weird guy, but I feel like well, I'll put it top of B tier, actually. Because you do really need great stats for the Gengar to be worthwhile investment. It's not just generally good as a species. You do need to catch one with great stats, preferably with Berry Finding S. That really carries it, but it's an ingredient finder, so you do also want ingredient finding somewhere in the sub-skills, so that makes it this weird middle ground, where it's kind of looking for two specialties, which is difficult to come by, so I'll say good if you caught one with great stats. Top of B tier, though. Onix. This is one of, I believe, 2 Pokemon we put... Oh, whoops, I just realized. We're not going to be evaluating Togetic. That was a mistake. That shouldn't have been in there. Onix is one of 2 unevolved Pokemon that we should be evaluating. I realized I made that mistake as well. We're not evaluating Swablu either. Okay, Onix. I'm going to put it solidly in... I'll put it in S tier. It's got great berry productivity. It's technically the strongest at raw berry production of any berry specialist, I believe, if you get the 2,000 hour ribbon on it, but that's a lot to do. And it's at top, which is not the best island. It's a great island. It's got some options and lots of things to hunt. But overall, I think having like a favorite berry at one of the later islands is a bit more valuable because they provide more Dream Shards and Research XP. So I don't think it's quite as on par with the Farfetch'd. Steelix, on the other hand, I'll rank Steelix now, just jumping a little bit. Its evolution, I think, is probably like hand in hand with Raichu. I could probably overlap these two because they're almost the exact same productivity for raw strength. I'll give the edge just a little bit to Raichu once again because, once again, personal bias. I've had a lot better experience with Raichu, and that's how I'll break the tiebreakers. But Onix, yeah, I think it's a little bit worse than Steelix just because Top's not as great of an island. But if you already have the Raichu, obviously don't evolve into an Steelix because I ranked it higher. For your account, the Onix is probably going to be better if you don't have a Typhlosion. So they really do have the same use case. In fact, you know what? I'll actually put Farfetch'd above them because they really should be basically on the same level. So that's how I'll rank them. Marowak. Here's where I just get sad. Marowak is just a sad Pokemon in this game. I can't reasonably suggest investment into a Marowak. It's the worst berry specialist in the game, and there's no debate there. If you look at raw berry output, no matter how you evaluate a berry specialist, it is almost always the worst. There's only one Pokemon that you can sometimes make look worse as far as berry specialists go. But from almost every metric that you can evaluate a berry specialist by, Marowak is just terrible, and sometimes can be beat by off-type specialists. Even if Marowak has favored berry, I think it can breach 2 times. Just invest something else. It's rough. I can't suggest it for any reason. It's better than these guys, though, because at least he has some raw strength being a berry specialist, but woof, they did him dirty. Like I said, no love for the ground types in this game. Dugtrio and Marowak are our only 2 ground lines, and these are their rankings in this game. The ground type is really not good in Pokemon Sleep. Anyway, Kangaskhan. I think Kangaskhan's solidly B tier. Ginger's alright. Potato and Ginger, it does okay at it. It's outclassed in both fields by a pretty decent margin, but if you catch one with great stats, I think it's solidly B tier. I don't even know what its main skill is. I think it's Ingredient Magnet S. It could be Charge Strength. It's one of those 2. It matters so little that I don't remember what its main skill is, so I'm putting it in B tier, just above the Victory Bell because there are less options for Ginger than there are tomatoes. So it gives it a bit more value for that. But, yeah. Mr. Mime. Now, Mr. Mime, here's where I'm probably going to make some people angry. I know that there are a lot of you guys out there that love Mime for its main skill. And maybe there's a lot of potential there with its main skill, but I think it's a very difficult main skill to work around. You need to have a great box that synergizes well with Mime's main skill. And that's not everybody's case. Like in the case of my box, I run a lot of Raichus, which has arguably the worst main skill for a Mime to mimic. So it's all just very situational upon what your box has, as far as the main skill goes. At heart, though, it's an ingredient specialist that produces tomatoes and potatoes. At heart, it is a Victory Bell clone, with a different main skill. And that, at one point, it was that as well, but a worse main skill. Nowadays, it has at least not just Charge Strength S, it's actually got Mimic, which has a lot more going for it, a ton more going for it. It's really difficult to actually rank it. I don't think it's generally good, because once again, you have to really work around it and try to make its skill very powerful. It's got some of the highest highs, but if it's not on the right team, it's going to be relatively low as well. So, I'm just going to say good if you caught a great one with great stats. I'll actually put it above Victory Bell now, because I think it's got more places than Victory Bell, despite being clones of each other in ingredient list. And Mime is worse for ingredients and berry strength, hands down. But now with its main skill, it's got something very unique going for it. In fact, I'll make it go above Kangaskhan. I don't think it's quite above Gengar, but I'll put it above Kangaskhan, even. And that's all I have to say about it. I know a lot of you guys love Mime, though, and that ranking, I know some of you would put it up here in game-changing. But it can only be as game-changing as the Pokemon you have it alongside. And if that's the case, is it really all that game-changing if it relies on other Pokemon to be game-changing? So, I'm putting it there. Pinsir. Honey and apples. That's really Pinsir's game. It's very outclassed in the apples. It's not got a great main skill. I think, once again, in the same right of Kangaskhan, I think it's either Ingredient Magnet or Charge Strength, but it's so insignificant that I don't actually remember what it is. And I actually run a Pinsir sometimes on the sleepers, so... And I still don't remember what its main skill is. But overall, I don't know. It's decent for Honey, but Venusaur's got it pretty outclassed. I'll put it here. Right by Kangaskhan. Same sort of points, I guess, kind of lie with that. Ditto. Now, Ditto's got that same fun main skill going for it as with Mime, but it's a bit more costly in many facets, but we're not really evaluating that for this tier list. But it's also significantly worse for the main skill. So I don't really want to consider it for that, because if you want it for the main skill, just go for a Mime instead. For Oil, Leeks, and Tail, it is terrible for Leeks, comparatively. Really shouldn't even be considered for that purpose. Oil, it's pretty bad as well. So really the one thing for it is Tail Farmer, which right alongside Slowbro for that purpose. But it's got a cooler main skill. Slowbro, the cooler Slowbro. But you need to invest it all the way to level 60, so that's kind of my thoughts with this. Holiday Hat Eevee. This is a weird one. I personally really liked Holiday Hat Eevee at one point, the idea of it, because it's a berry specialist with Dream Shard Magnet, which I thought one of the biggest things holding Dream Shard Magnet back was the fact that it was only put on skills specialists. I was kind of wrong looking back at that, because a lot of the... Well, I think the devs agree with me, and that's why all the berry specialists they've given us with Dream Shard Magnet have been terrible. Like, genuinely. And that's the problem with Holiday Hat Eevee, is it needs to actually provide berry strength to actually be good at what it's trying to do. And then having that Dream Shard Magnet as a side productivity is like a nice bonus just to get you more Dream Shards throughout the week. So I think it's kind of nice in that sense. Eevee candies are very abundant, but I still think even with a cool main skill on a berry specialist, it's still kind of meh. I don't think I can say... It's the very bottom of meh. That's kind of my thoughts on it. I'll place it there. Vaporeon. Now, as time goes on, Vaporeon actually kind of gets weaker, because what it's trying to do is proc its main skill, which is the ingredient magnets, and as time goes on, there's more ingredients out of the game. Ingredient magnets is going to be less reliable to give us the ingredients we need to actually make a meal. So it makes Vaporeon very difficult to use. It gets a lot of filler, but filler just equates to raw strength, kind of, in a way. And if you're valuing it for that, naturally you'll get stronger gains by investing in Espeon. So I find it very difficult to use. I'll say it's a niche application. It's less niche than Halloween Hat Pika. So I'll put it there. And it's interestingly almost a better Tail Farmer than these two right now. But that'll only get worse as time goes on, because more ingredients will get added to the pool for Vaporeon, whereas these guys will continue to produce the same amount of tails. Jolteon is right alongside Arcanine, and they have the very same niche. But Jolteon, they basically are the same. I'm just going to put them like that. Jolteon's a little bit worse for procs, though, so I'll put it a little bit lower than Arcanine. Ultimately, if you've got a Raikou team, go for Jolteon. If you've got an Entei team, go for Arcanine. That's really kind of the comparison there. Flareon. Now, this is the first... This is one where you have to consider context. Because the pod expanders, on certain accounts, are very, very powerful. If you're free to play, and you don't have access to good camp tickets, they give you the capability to rely, or to consistently actually make the top tier meals that you wouldn't otherwise be able to make. They're also great for making the top tier meals during off weeks so that you can level them. If you spend diamonds on good camp tickets, though, and use them during every single pivotal week, usually you'll have a decent level on those meals. Usually you'll be making those meals you'll be able to make the meals without a pot expander at all. And if you're using it to just expand a pot to fill with filler, unless that filler is tails that you've stockpiled, it's really not going to equate to all that much more strength. So overall, I think that it's still a niche. It's a very very high potential niche if you're on the right account, but it by definition is a niche. But it's a very strong niche, even if using for overstacking cooking power-up procs for Monday morning. That's a very high potential as well. But it's ultimately a niche application, and I don't want to put it any higher than C, because I don't think it's generally good. You have to know what you're doing with it to actually get the strength out of it. You can't just catch one with great stats and use it. I guess that's kind of the bar between B and C is. If you have one that's decent, that kind of puts me in a tough bind with mine. I don't know. I'm putting it in C. Dragonite. Well, Dragonite's very flexible. It could either make you herbs, it can make you corn, it can even make you oil. If you make the oil comparison, interestingly, at level 60, it actually is pretty competitive for oil productivity, despite it being its C ingredient. So it's very good at all three of the ingredients that it does. So it kind of can do whatever you need it to do, and it produces so many herbs that even though herbs right now aren't really all that great, if we look at the top options, none of the top options really have herbs. None of the top options really even have corn. Oil's up here, but most people aren't using Dragonite for the purposes of oil. But it produces so many ingredients. So many. That I feel like I just have to put it up in S tier, especially with how flexible it is. So you find the right one. But I'll put it at the bottom of S tier, since right now the meal meta has not been too kind to Dragonite. Meganium is the first of the Johto starters. We finally got through the Kanto decks. Meganium, you probably could have seen this coming, is going straight up into S tier as one of the berry specialists for the islands, like one of the main berry specialists for the islands. As far as between Alola Tails, Raichu, and these three, I'm going to kind of rank them as to how other than Alola Tails, because Alola Tails got extra synergy going for it. For these three, though, I'm going to kind of just rank them based off of which island is the best to have higher strength at, which Meganium has the best island of these three. Old Gold Power Plant is better than Lapis to have access to. In fact, we'll put Steelix actually up there, because I feel like he's a little bit better. Like I said, they're basically the same in that sense. These are going to be shifting around quite a bit. Other than that, I think it's better to have it at top, which, you know what, we'll do that, actually. There we go. I think that's a fair ranking for the berry specialists for these guys. Farfetch'd is... I think this is actually more game-changing than even having a good berry specialist at Lapis. So we'll do that. Dragonite's still comfortably the bottom of S tier, though, for now. Ampharos. Ampharos is basically Golduck. I mean, these two, once again, could be like an overlap situation again. I'll put it there. They do the same sort of thing, but all the same reasons that I gave for Golduck, I can give for Ampharos. It's just they have slightly different playstyles. Golduck's check the app a lot more to get higher strength than Ampharos. Ampharos is, you don't have to be as active of a player, but you still get consistently high strength, and you're not as hurt by infrequent check time. You'll be hurt for infrequent check time on either of them, but less hurt for the Ampharos. Okay, Sudowoodo. Sudowoodo's a weird one, because it does the same sort of thing as these guys. It's a little bit worse, though. It's better for the skill. It is actually... It's about the same as Espeon for the skill. But it's a little bit worse than these two for the skill, so I'll put it down in B. Good if caught with one with great stats. I think that a lot of players rank it very lowly when it really shouldn't be ranked that low. Just because it is slow. It is bonkers slow. But it counteracts that by having a good skill trigger rate, a very good skill trigger rate for the skill that it has. And that makes it alright, but that does make it so that it's producing less berries, so potentially at higher levels. It also doesn't gain as much if it has Berry Finding S, so it makes it a little bit worse. In fact, I think Honey right now is good enough that I'll actually rank him there. Ginger's not as great, though, so I'll put him between these two. But he's definitely probably the worst of the Charge Strength M and S options, the Charge Strength skill specialists. Primarily just because that slow speed does hold him back a little bit, because he's relying on just the skill, which just the skill is always going to provide general strength. He can't even really help out that much at top with the extra berry productivity because of how slow he is. So that's like the one thing holding it back, is that it's very dependent upon just the skill. Quagsire. Now, Quagsire, we think mushrooms and potatoes are like the primary things Quagsire does. Which, if we look right now, the meta hasn't been all too kind to mushrooms. It's kind of stuck up in potatoes, but there's a lot of options for potatoes. especially ABB options, just like Quagsire is. So really, the only unique thing that it's got going for it is Mushrooms, which is just Hidden Power Perk of Stew, which just had a new meal come out. So comparatively, it's stepped back a little bit, but I still think it's decent. But also Gengar is cool for Mushrooms, especially if you get one with Berry Finding S. Then it's like running a Berry Finder and Mushroom Specialist in the same time. I'll put it just above Gengar, because it is better at Mushrooms, and I feel like people would be kind of upset if I put Gengar higher than it, because it was kind of thought of as the Mushroom Pokemon, and it's interesting. It's also better with any extra helpful interactions, as well as the Helper Boost skill, because it's a slower Pokemon that relies on higher value procs. So, whereas Gengar is a faster Pokemon that relies on higher speed and lower value procs, which doesn't synergize as well for those skills. So, it's got a little bit going for it over Gengar, and it is significantly better for Mushrooms. And Mushrooms don't really synergize that well with Herbs, so Gengar doesn't even have that going for it. So, I'll put it there. Okay, Espeon. Espeon is very similar to Sudowoodo, honestly. I think Espeon's a little bit better. It's worse for the skill, but better for the berries. So, they're very comparative. If you have a Cresselia, this thing is S tier. But you need to have a Cresselia for that to be the case. And most players don't have a Cresselia, so I can't put it up there when trying to rank it that way. Because if I started considering interactions with legendary beasts and the legendaries as a whole, that's going to vary from account to account. And I don't want to encourage, Cresselia's S tier because it synergizes well with Cress. Well, if you don't have a Cress, then that means nothing to you. So for the general player's account, I think it's solidly B tier right alongside Sudowoodo. Because they basically do the same thing, but Espeon's just a little bit better for berries. Like I said, weaker for the skill, but better for berries, and that makes its total strength a little bit better. Umbreon. I still can confidently put this in no, but it's moved up higher in no, I'd say. It's better than it used to be. This dude has gone through multiple series of buffs. It's probably the most buffed Pokemon in the game at this point, aside from maybe Wobbuffet. Yet it still is bad. There's maybe a niche application for it on Darkrai teams being the only Dark-type healer. But honestly, I think that you'd be better off just running a really good Gardevoir. And then just tanking the energy on your own Pokemon. Sure, your Gardevoir is going to be healed less and be probably a little bit less reliable because you might get more into an energy death spiral. But it's so much better for healing, and really it's the team's energy that you care about, not the healer's energy. The healer, if it has 0% energy by the end of the day, that's alright. Doesn't make any impact at all. As long as the rest of the team's energized. If they're at 150% when you put it to sleep and the healer's at 0%, who cares? So, I'm putting it down here, because even the one niche it has, it's not that great at. And most players probably aren't using Darkrai, so yeah, Slowking, I think it's actually a little bit better than Slowbro. It's worse for the tail productivity, but the extra skill procs are kind of nice, and it is a skill specialist at heart. Now, the skill isn't great, but I think it's worth taking the very, very minuscule hit to tail productivity for getting a decent amount more berries and a decent amount more procs to the skill. So I'm putting it just a little bit higher than Slowbro. I still think Ditto's a bit better, though, because it has a cooler skill. And it's just the best tail producer overall, I'd say. These dudes have a bit more synergy with Suicune, if you have a good Suicune. Then I think I'd maybe shift them up a little bit more in the C tier, but they'd still be C tier. Okay, Wobbuffet, the other example of one of the most buffed Pokemon in the game, and yet it still is not great. I think it's got a little bit less going for it than Umbreon, even. It's got more going for it than these two, because these two are just skill seed sync. But Wobbuffet's not too far off in terms of that. Energizing Cheer. Energizing Cheer is in a weird place. I think of it as it's a balanced skill. It's a decent skill. The problem is Energy for Everyone is an unbalanced and centralizing skill. And Energy for Everyone makes Energizing Cheer redundant and useless if you use Energy for Everyone. If you didn't have access to Energy for Everyone, it'd be a tremendously balanced skill. But because of Energy for Everyone, it's useless in the meta. And that's what leads to all these Pokemon being down here, is just the over-centralization of Energy for Everyone. Heracross can go right alongside Vaporeon. They basically are the same, one and the same now, ever since they buffed its frequency. I'll put it slightly above it because it's technically slightly faster. Well, it's a decent amount faster, but slightly better for procs. It does cost an extra main skill seed, though, so it's a bit more expensive. It's also a 16-pip Pokemon, so if you're looking for it, this role to be filled on the team, go for Vaporeon instead of Heracross. But Heracross is technically slightly better, so I'll put it slightly higher. Delibird. Now, Delibird that was a lot of players' long-term hunts. I feel bad for the people that hunted really solid Delibirds, and then later Blissey came out. But, it's like, I think it's good if you caught one with great stats. And I think it's comfortably there, especially with eggs being a bit better right now. I think it's a little bit better than what these guys can do, because eggs are pretty powerful right now with well, it's not in Claire's actually. But it's in the Sukiyaki Curry and the Apple Acid Salad, which are both very powerful. And even the Petal Blizzard, which is, I believe, the biggest meal you can make without a pot expansion, which is a nice, nice benefit for if you don't want to spend a good camp ticket. These 3 meals make eggs really good, and it is a decent egg producer. It's not as good as Blissey, but it's decent for them. So if you catch one with great stats, I think it's got potential. It also synergizes on Apple Acid with eggs and apples. So if you got a different ingredient list, there's potential investment there. If you've already got your eggs covered, then there's potential as well. So I'm putting it comfortably in B tier. Houndoom. Now, Houndoom is another one that I think a lot of players underrate. And I think that's because a lot of players don't consider the main skill value on Berry Specialist, which is generally a decent play. A decent thing, because you don't want to really be putting main skill seeds into your Berry Specialists, especially if you're at a seed deficit. If you have main skill seeds to spend, though, Houndoom's actually a pretty solid Berry Specialist. The problem is just the expense of main skill seeds into a Berry Specialist to make it alright. I think if you're willing to invest the main skill seeds, I'd say he's generally good. I don't think he's game-changing. But given that you usually can't expend the main skill seeds on a Berry Specialist, I think it's only kind of B tier. It's just kind of mid. I'll put it just below these other ones, because these two have better islands than Snowdrop. So I'll put it slightly below these guys. Blissey. Now, Blissey is like the Eggmon. It's got a great main skill and Energy for Everyone. Now, it's not going up in Energy for Everyone because it's not a skill specialist. That it's not going to reliably heal the team. But nice supplemental heals for sure. I'd say the eggs that it produces are generally good, especially right now. Better than the sausages, better than the beans. Probably even better than the honey, honestly. I think I'll put it at the top of... Well, this might also be a contender... Okay, Blissey might be a contender for S tier. Not gonna lie. Oh, whoops, wrong input. Now that they released this Sukiyaki Curry, I think it's actually reasonable. Especially with the honey. There's a nice synergistic combo potentially there with the Sukiyaki Curry. Oh, sorry about that. I'm going to put it in S tier. It's got a lot of things going for it, and even better than Dragonite, I think, because, like I said, herbs right now are kind of lower in the meta. Now, everything that I say about Blissey also can apply to Chansey. I could have probably put it in here as a pre-evo, kind of like with Steelix and Onix. But ultimately, Chansey and Blissey do the same thing, whereas these guys have different roles, being at different islands. But Chansey can be arguably better than Blissey if you get the 2,000-hour ribbon, so just, that's a whole different thing, though. Okay, now we have the Legendary Beasts. Now, this is one that I think my tier lists have gotten controversial with in the past, and that is, I think that they're pretty niche in the way that they work. It's a very complicated skill to build around. And because of the way I define the tier list as niche, but potentially strong in said niche, all of them, I think, belong here in niche application. Now, what order they go in, I do... Because the biggest niche for them in meta play is berry bombing. And the best for that is arguably Entei, I believe. Because it's got Ninetales and Typhlosion to build up a two berry specialist lines that it can build on. Raikou has a lot of options as well, so it's a little bit better than Suicune in that regard. Entei and Raikou also have a secondary overstacker to work with them. And in Raikou's case, it actually has a healer. So one could make the case for Raikou being a little bit better than Entei. But overall, the Pokemon that surround them, this is going to be a very box-dependent one. And it's like if you want one of them, catch them all. I wouldn't recommend really hunting any of them because they're very, very expensive for what they can do. But niche application, but very powerful in that niche. And all three of them kind of do it very well. It's just with different Pokemon that they'll synergize with. So this is kind of a box-to-box thing. I'm going to rank it in this order, though, just because of the Ninetales and Arcanine synergy for Entei. Tyranitar. Now, Tyranitar, I'm going to put it right alongside Dragonite, because I can say a lot of things that I said about Dragonite apply to Tyranitar as well. That being primarily, we think of Tyranitar, we think of Ginger. Which, Ginger is still in Zingzap Cola. And Soybeans, which is its secondary option, is in one of the top 2 meals. You know what? I'm actually going to put Tyranitar a little bit higher right now, because if the meta's been a bit nicer to Ginger and Soybeans than it has to Herbs and Corn. So, it's going to get a little bit of a nicer rating than what Dragonite got. But I think they have a lot of the same sort of things going for them right now. I think with Zingzap Cola, it can arguably be better than Blissey, even. So, that's why I'll put that guy. Gardevoir is E for E, and it's the best E for E. At least at the raw energy for everyone procs, so it's going right there. There's no doubt about that one. Vigoroth is a berry specialist, and it's not got as nice of a skill as Houndoom does. It's better than Raticate, but it's also a very difficult one to get. I'm going to put it below... I'm just going to put it right there, because they basically are like... These two are kind of one and the same, but this one's got self-recharge, and this one's got Ingredient Magnet, but it's not great for the main skill. It doesn't become great for the main skill until it becomes Slacking. Now... Oh, Slacking. It's really trying to be Vaporeon and Heracross, but is not good at it. Meh. Well... It's not good. It's rough. I'm going to put him there. It can be alright for Ingredient Magnet, but it's not... If you want Ingredient Magnet, go with the actual skill specialists. They can double bank, and they don't have as many inventory problems, because they don't have the double berries filling up their inventory. It's not even good as a berry specialist. It's got too high of an ingredient rate, which normally doesn't matter all that much on berry specialists, but Slacking's is absurdly high. And you could Sneaky Snack to get around that. But if you're Sneaky Snacking, then just keep it as a Vigoroth, because Vigoroth is faster, and the only stat that matters in Sneaky Snacking conditions is the berry rate, or is the frequency. So, just use Vigoroth if you want it for that purpose. Otherwise, you should be evolving it only for the boost in skill rate and inventory, and in ingredients as well, because it produces more tomatoes and I think honey is its main ingredient. But it's not great at anything. It's trying to be a jack of all trades, and there really isn't a great place for a jack of all trades Pokemon in the current situation of the game. So, Sableye. Now, Sableye is actually alright. The problem is at Dream Shard Magnet specifically. The problem with Sableye is that it's a 16-pip Pokemon, which once again I'm kind of ignoring that for the purposes of this video. And it's also outclassed. So I'm going to put it like at the... I would probably rather have a well-invested Sableye than a Holiday Hat Eevee, and right now an Arbok as well. Because it is actually alright at the main skill. I'll put it there. Well, I'll put it there. Because, like, Butterfree doesn't have an island yet either. So, yeah, I think it's comfortably there. It is outclassed, though, quite a bit by Swalot. Mawile. Now, Mawile is new oil farmer option, new corn farmer option, but it's not great for corn. It's primarily for oil, but it's also got cool synergy on green grass salad. Problem is the meal that they picked for it is pretty... It's just kind of an okay meal. Oh, well, wrong input, sorry. Green grass salad is like... It's good if it's non-good camp ticket weeks, I'd say. It's a pretty solid option for non-good camp ticket weeks. But there are better... Well, actually, these ones are all kind of comparative. So, if you're a free-to-play player, I think it's got great potential. But at the same time, a free-to-play player isn't going to be able to invest the main skill seeds that make Mawile great at making green grass salad. So, it puts it in a weird spot. I'm going to say niche application. Well, but oil's pretty good. So, I do have to put it higher for that. Because even if you're just evaluating it as an oil producer alone, it's one of the better ones. So I'll say good if caught, one with great stats. I'll put it right along... Delibird's got a little bit more going for it with eggs, so I'll put it just below Delibird. Aggron. Better Charizard. They're like kind of one and the same, but Aggron's got Coffee going for it as well, but it's pretty outclassed for Coffee by Vikavolt, so... I'd say just generally good. I'll put him above the Golem, because it has some interesting synergies with Coffee as well, but a lot of players don't really consider it for that purpose. Swalot. Now, here's the one that I was talking about that is just strictly better than Sableye in, like, almost every way. And I think every player can use it. It's a pretty easy one to use. I think before I said this was niche, but I now think there's more of a purpose for it, since things are getting more and more expensive. So, I think eventually Swalot's probably going to be a mandatory Pokemon on almost every player's account, if you want to actually level high tier Pokemon. But right now, it's, I think, just good if you catch one with great stats. I'll put it like, I don't know, it feels... I'll put it there. That feels like a good spot for it. No reason why I put it between Sudowoodo and Kangaskhan specifically. It just feels right. Altaria is another one that really suffers from not having an island. If they give it an island, then it will be better, but for now, it's just gonna go there, I guess. Sure, there. Very similar. Actually, these two are almost kind of one and the same. Just for a different... Kind of like what I was saying about, what is it? Primeape and Meganium. Very similar with Arbok and Altaria. Kind of one and the same. Same skill, same island in being no island, as of right now. But whenever we get an island, these three do get a bump up, maybe even in two stages of viability, but they're all pretty bad at the berry specialty, and I'm hoping that they give us a new berry specialist for the new island. That theoretically has those berry types. Now, Banette is... I've been underwhelmed by Banette. I have one with pretty good stats, but it just never seems to find a role on the teams for me. Now, that's probably because I have an abundance of Raichus. I think if you have one with great stats, it can be good. It's just there are so many other options for Old Gold Power Plant Mons, and it's kind of mid at the Ghost Berries. It also is semi-outclassed by Gengar in some capacity. And Gengar also produces a good amount of mushrooms, so I don't know. I'm just gonna put it there. And I'll actually put it below these two ingredient guys. It gets to go there. Because it feels like worse Raichu. It is kind of how it feels to me. Same skill, same island. Actually, yeah, it is this kind of worse Raichu, isn't it? They both have charge strength. They both have Old Gold Power Plant. It's got different ingredients. I mean, that's about it. Absol. Now, Absol is better for Cacao than Blastoise is. But it doesn't have the nice synergy with the milk. Now, it is missing... Its mushroom sea ingredient is kind of weird. Apples is kind of meh on it. I think it kind of goes in here, but more kind of top of the line. I think the meta's been a bit nicer to cacao than it has been to mushrooms. They're both in some of the more top tier meals, but I'll put it safely there. Walrein. Now, Walrein is... It's most players' option for Snowdrop Berry Specialist, but if you actually make the comparison, it's not a very great Snowdrop Berry Specialist. It just kind of does it, and a lot of players have the option to catch a good Spheal before Snowdrop, like I was saying before when talking about Alolan Ninetales. So I think it can be generally good. I don't think it's amazing by any means. I'll put it just below these guys. It does well enough at Snowdrop, and how often do you need to go Snowdrop that it's really all that great? In fact, actually, maybe I should bump down... Well, I do think Alolan Ninetales is very underrated, and I think having that main skill on it does put it up there if you genuinely catch a good one. Luxray. Now, Luxray is oil and tomatoes, kind of 2-in-1, 2-for-1 bargain for what it can do. Like we were talking about with... There's a lot of options for both oil and tomatoes, so that makes it a bit more difficult to put up in the higher tiers. But I still think that it generally can be good. I think if you catch one with the right stats, it can be good on any player's account. But I'll rank it a little bit lower just because there are a lot of options for both ingredients that it's trying to make. And it wouldn't be ultimately that game-changing if you caught a great one. Drifblim, oh... Personally, I hate this Pokemon. I'm going to be honest. I like its design. I think it's kind of cute. And I like the idea behind it, but I think it was implemented very poorly in this game. And every time that I try to evaluate it in Rain on X, it's just not worth it to me. There's no justification for the time investment that Drifblim takes. Because you have to commit a team slot, and it forces you to hold it until it spits up. And even if you do that, I don't even know if it's worth the commitment. What I was trying to do, it's a generalist, which as we were talking, generalists really can't be better than just generally good to begin with. And it's a generalist that's super inconsistent on when you get your strength, which realistically you want to be right away at the start of the week. You can kind of control that in a limited capacity if you're willing to use the airplane mode exploit. So it just puts it in a weird spot. I personally hate it. But I do think that there is some strength there, and it does have a bit of a niche with strength carryover. I'll put it in the bottom of C tier because it does have some niche application. But man, it is riding the line. It is very much so riding the line there. Now, Honchkrow. Honchkrow is another one that I think is kind of running into the slacking issue, but to a lesser extent. Where it's spreading itself too thin. Trying to be both a Dream Shard skill specialist and a Ingredient Magnet skill specialist. I think if they had swapped the effects on Super Luck, or the crit effects on Super Luck and Hyper Cutter, I think it would have improved both Mawile and Honchkrow by quite a bit, because it would have given Honchkrow the better capacity to actually make the ingredients that it's trying to make. And it would have given Mawile this neat, extra unique little niche where every once in a while you might get some Dream Shards. Just an extra little Dream Shard productivity. I think it would have made both the Pokemon better. It definitely would have been better for Honchkrow's sake than it would have been for Mawile, but I think they both would have been improved in some capacity. But I think that it's... I think it's down in meh. I'm going to be honest. It doesn't have the right... If they made it instead of... I think it was soybeans. No, bean sausage. If they swapped its bean sausage in its thing also with soybeans, I think was the one that it needed. Let me see. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's missing one of these... Oh, tomatoes. That's the one it's missing. It's missing tomatoes. If they swapped the sausage proc with tomatoes, I think it would give this guy a much better chance. And they made it, like I said, swapped Hyper Cutter with Super Lux effects, crit effects. Then I think this dude would have been a lot better. And it probably could have been up in B or even maybe A. I think B. I think it would have been in B tier. But given that they did it the way that they did it, I think it's only meh at best. And I'll put it like there. Lucario's a no. I'll put it a little bit above Wobbuffet, but we're ranking bad again. Like, would you rather eat a rotten tomato or a rotten egg is kind of the question here. They're all bad investments down here, so it really doesn't matter where I put them within. Toxicroak's alright for oil. It's got some nice synergy with oil and sausage. In Defiant, give me a moment. Yeah, Defiant coffee dress salad. There's a lot of potential with it, I feel like. But if you look at it for just the mono oil list, that's also a decent option. Because it is theoretically the best. Slightly, basically the same as Luxray for oil productivity. But once again, oil's got a lot of options. Mawile actually produces a little bit more if you are willing to put skill seeds into it. But I'll put it right alongside Mawile because that's primarily what it's doing. But it doesn't also have that niche of like focusing green grass salads. So I'll put them alongside each other. Abomasnow's tomatoes and eggs. I think it's got the tomato problem that Victory Bell kind of had, as I was saying before. And as far as eggs go, I mean, it's right alongside Delibird in egg productivity, so I can't really put it that much higher than, like, here. I'll put it right there. Because it's a little bit better for tomatoes, it's a little bit worse for eggs, and, yeah, that feels comfortable for me. Now, Weavile. I think Weavile has the potential to be the most game-changing berry specialist in the game. Just because of its extra Tasty Chance S main skill. Very similar to Alolan Ninetales and why I rank it this highly. And it's interesting that Snowdrop has what's arguably the best berry specialists. But both of them have the same problem of it spawns at Snowdrop pretty much exclusively. Weavile actually does spawn at Greengrass, so you do have a few more options to catch it prior to, but Sneasel's a very expensive Pokemon, so most players don't have it by that point. But its skill is tremendously good, and a skill that you don't need a lot of procs on, so even though it's terrible at proccing the main skill, even just 1 or 2 procs a day is enough to work wonders. So that's why I'm putting it up in S tier. Probably one of the best, if not the best berry specialist in the game, but also very, very expensive. I wouldn't recommend a hunt on it, even though it is great. Not as mandatory as Energy for Everyone is. Magnezone is the best of the pot expanders, so I'll put it at the top of that. Is it better than Flareon? But it's a pot expander. See what I said about Flareon for why I'm putting Magnezone here. Togekiss, Metronome is just too random to actually make. It's very fun, but it's too random to actually reliably be able to predict what it's doing. I'll put it, I don't know, there, because you never know what to expect from it. It's very meh. Too random, but fun. Very fun. Leafeon, top of no, I'd say. For very similar reasons as, like, Umbreon. It's got Energizing Cheer. Honestly, the Slow Twins would probably be down here if they didn't have tails. But Leafeon doesn't even have that going for it. So, and it detracts your EV candy. Glaceon, once again, Flareon, Slee, Magnezone. I believe it's about the same. It's about the same procs as Flareon, but I think it's slightly better. So, I'll put it there. In between them. Gallade. Very meh, I feel. If you don't have access to a legendary beast, then it is the best Pokemon if you want to try and Berry Bomb. But it's not even that great at it, and I don't know if Berry Bombing should be a tactic you're going for if you don't have access to a legendary beast. My mind might change on this. I do eventually plan to get a Gallade in the Sleep Sleeper series that I'm doing. But so that I can work towards Berry Bombing there. But I don't know if I can really justify it right now. And given that it takes Gardevoir candies, or Ralts candies, that you could be using on a Gardevoir, it's more difficult to justify. I'm going to put it solidly. You know what? I'll put it just above the Drifloon. I'll put it in C tier because it does have that niche. And maybe there's more going for extra helpful than I'm thinking of. But I still wouldn't recommend investment for, once again, if you can make a good Gardevoir out of it, do that first and foremost. It's way better. Now, Cresselia. Cresselia, I think, takes the cake for, in my opinion, as like the best Pokemon in the game. It is worse for Energy for Everyone heals. Gardevoir is hands down. In fact, if we're evaluating the Energy for Everyone Pokemon by their healing value, I think it is the worst. Or it is the worst of the... That's like hands down. There's not even a comparison there. But the berries that it produces is so strong, so game-changing that like I said, it raises Espeon's viability for players who have a good Cresselia. From, I'd say, B tier to S tier. Because it's that impactful if you get a good one. The problem is it's legendary, so once again, return on investment is a consideration here. But evaluating in a vacuum, looking at raw strength alone, Cresselia definitely feels like it belongs as the best Pokemon in the game. Darkrai. Now here's one that hurts me to rank because of the way that I set this up. Personally, I don't like the Darkrai implementation. And if this were a ranking for return on investment, it would be like probably worse than Holiday Hat Pikachu. Return on investment, it is one of the biggest biscuit sinks in the game. But evaluating in a vacuum, it is better than Houndoom, at least. In fact, I've actually made the comparison before between Darkrai and Houndoom. They're very oddly similar, despite one being a legendary all-specialist and one being a berry specialist. But I have to... If its main skill did not... Okay, it is game-changing. I guess it is game-changing. The problem is, it is game-changing in the sense that it changes your game because you have to try and work around its main skill. Because it's game-changing in a negative way. But it is generally good, I feel like, if you get good sub-skills on it. You know, that's good if caught with great stats. That's pretty much what I feel about Darkrai. Now, I do think it's more of the top end because it does produce a lot of each one of them. So I'll put it kind of... I don't know. I'll put it there. The fact that it's even up there is very generous from me, because I do not have much good things to say about the Darkrai implementation and how much it costs. If I was evaluating this on return on investment, honestly, I'd probably make a separate tier below no that's just called Darkrai, because I think that the cost for how many biscuits it takes to raise a Darkrai is just tremendously expensive for what it gives you. Even if we could have one good one of every single Pokemon in the game, I think I'd still put it in B tier for what it can offer. Okay, Musharna. It's meh. I'm just gonna say that. It's like... I don't even think it really has a great niche. It is the third best Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon, despite not even being a skill specialist. That's how bad Persian and Holiday Hat Pikachu are, and Lucario. But at the same time, it's not very good for berries. At least it has a favorite berry island, but it's difficult to justify investment into Musharna unless you have phenomenal stats. And need something for Lapis. Or if you have a Cresselia, once again, it probably raises Musharna from like D tier to like B tier. Just like it raises Espeon from B tier to S tier. In fact, the same can be said. If it's Psychic type, it can probably be shifted up the ladder 2 steps. If you have a good Cresselia in your box. But as it is, in a vacuum, it's just D tier. Braviary. Now, Braviary, I feel like, is a weird one. I think Braviary runs into the whole when you catch it issue of it'd be phenomenally powerful very early game. But early game, you have your seed investments that you need to be putting into, like, Energy for Everyone, Generalist, like, right away, are probably your 2 best seed investments right away. And Braviary is not a great Generalist until late game, when its berries get way stronger. So justifying early game investment into it is difficult to do, but then late game, you don't really need flying type berries in mass amounts, because you're not going to Cyan all that often. So, context of when you catch it makes it very meh. But I think it's got potential, very similar to like for Alligator. And if you were to invest it up, I think it basically can be a generalist, but it's once again trying to spread itself thin between being a generalist and being a cyan berry specialist. So I think it makes it a little bit worse than the generalists. So I'll put it like there. That's where I'm going to put it. Yeah. In fact, I'll just jump straight forward to Mimikyu, because it's probably going to have like the same sort of results. But it's got a better island, but I think Mimikyu is actually going to be a little bit better, because the crit is kind of cool. So, and you can always swap it off after the crit, because that's what gives it the better productivity, depending on how you evaluate it. Sylveon's Energy for Everyone. Now in a vacuum, it is better than Wigglytuff by like a minuscule amount, but costs an extra main skill seed. It's mostly you're just looking between these two for an ingredient list if you could choose. But realistically, it's like, which one do you catch first? Dedenne. Now, Dedenne is easily top of S tier. I don't know where I'd put it between... It's either going there or there. I think I'm going to put it there. Just because it's more reliable at the Tasty Chance and you can always swap it off. So, it's easily the most game-changing... Aside from access to energy for everyone, one could argue that, like, it's not an energy for everyone Pokemon, but one could argue that it's as game-changing as access to energy for everyone. I don't think it's quite there. I don't think it's mandatory, because that's the reasoning why I have energy for everyone up in its own category, is because I see it as almost mandatory. I don't think Dedenne is mandatory to have in that. Like, it certainly helps a ton, but I don't think it's mandatory, which is why I'm still not putting it up in the other category that exists outside the type chart, or not the type chart, the tier list. But it's top of S tier for sure. Now, Vikavolt, coffee, definitely the strongest ingredient in the game right now. If you're not talking raw numbers, that'd be Tails. And I think that's more game-changing than even Weavile access, if I'm honest. Not as game-changing as Dedenne, but coffee is that good. It goes up there. That's all I really have to say to that. Bewear. Now, Bewear is definitely one victim of the fall-off of corn as time's gone on. But corn can still be useful. I think it's a generally good ingredient. Dragonite does better than it for corn, but it gives more flexibility to the Dragonite to do other things if you have a corn Bewear. And it's about the same. It's also pretty good at sausage productivity. That's kind of an underrated thing that a lot of players don't notice. It's a shockingly good at sausage. So, yeah, I think it's about on par with Aggron in terms of, like, not like in terms of sausage productivity, but in, like, how helpful it can be to your account if you have access to a good one. Comfey. That's meh. I mean... It's just much worse Beware, sorry, I said that wrong. Much worse Beware. Man, I cannot say that. Bewear. That is available earlier, but much, much worse. With Ginger as well. Which doesn't really have great synergy. There's some synergy with Corn and Ginger, but not great. And more early game, it's not late game synergies. So I think because it has corn, which is leeks are a better ingredient, but a Dugtrio is not producing enough leeks to really make a significant impact. Unless you have really, really good stats. So I'll put it like, I don't know. This is a tough one. I'm ranking a lot of mid right now. I'm putting that. You know, I think actually Vigoroth's better than Slacking. I'm gonna swap those again. Okay. In fact, I think Raticate's better than Slacking. Why did I put it up that high before? Okay, Cramorant. Cramorant's another interesting one because of access to Extra Tasty. It theoretically, being the only ingredient specialist with Extra Tasty access, it theoretically should be the best abuser of Extra Tasty, or Tasty Chance S. But once again, it's an oil farmer at heart. Potentially, what's its B ingredient? Potatoes. And there's some interesting synergies there as well. I think you need to catch great stats on it, though. It needs to be carried by its stats. So we're gonna... I'm gonna put it at top of B tier. Maybe that's a controversial pick there. But I think it's got a lot of potential that a lot of players are writing off. The big problem with it is, once again, 16 pip. I think if it were a 5 pip Pokemon, a lot more players would feel better about the Cramorant investment. Especially if it had 2 levels of evolution. If that was the case, I feel like a lot of players would see Cramorant in a really good light. Because then it would also have level 3 main skill, which would feel a lot better than getting just the... I think it's like 4% off the base level proc. So, I think that would raise it to 6%, which would be a much... It would be a little bit better of an impact. So, I'll put it there. Personally. I'm sure my tier list looks way different than it has in the past. Than it has in past videos. But anyway, potatoes and milk on Meowscarada. I think that's pretty powerful. It's also really good for berries if it has Berry Fighting S. It's definitely not game-changing to have access to, but it's got a really nice skill as well. I'll put it kind of up here. I don't know. I'll put it right between there, because I think potatoes are a little bit... Well, with the new meal that just came out, I'll move it down, too, because they both have the sausage going for them, which is now in the new highest top meal. I guess Defiant has potatoes, but there's a lot of potato options is the problem there. So you don't need the Meowscarada as much as, say, something else. Well, there's a lot of sausage options, too. A lot of the same things can be said about Meowscarada as what can be said about the sausage farmers. Okay. Skeledirge. Now, I feel like Skeledirge genuinely can be game-changing, too. Apples being in 2 of the highest value meals in the game. A lot of stuff can be said about Blissey can be said about Skeledirge. I'll make Blissey a little bit better than Skeledirge, just because it's got self-recharge instead of energy for everyone. So I think Blissey's got a little bit more going for it, in terms of just other facets. But I'm gonna put Skeledirge up there in game-changing. Definitely belongs up there. Okay. You know, coming back to this... Actually, okay. I'll move Blissey and Dirge up above the Johto starters. Looking this over again. I don't think it's as impactful. Well, I think actually access to eggs is going to be a little bit more reliable. Better than access to lots of leaks. So I'm going to put Blissey a little bit higher there, too. But I think leaks make a bigger impact than apples, because a lot of things have apples, and not a lot of things have leaks. But not a lot of things produce a lot of eggs, either, so... I still think having a solid berry specialist is almost mandatory for Old Gold Power Plant, though, so I'll leave these guys a bit higher. And Alolan, Ninetales, and Weavile have other stuff going for them, so I'm leaving them there as well. But I'm going to shift Blissey and Skeledirge up a little bit. Alrighty, Quaquaval. Now, this is probably a hot topic right now, just because Quaquaval just kind of got power crept quite a bit by the Farfetch'd. If we were ranking in return on investment, I would put it right alongside Farfetch'd, but I can't do that, because that's how I define the tier list. I think it's just generally good, because even though it's way worse for leaks, it is definitely a subpar option comparatively, and it does take a lot of investment to get it up there well. The synergy with soybeans is really nice, and the Ninja Meals, but I said Ninja Meals were kind of falling off a little bit. But just having access to leaks as a secondary option to leaks is pretty powerful. So I'm going to put it at the top of A tier. I still think it's very good. Obviously, if you have the good Farfetch'd, though, you're not necessarily going to need the Quaquaval. And it could be soybeans instead. So it could be a side grade option to Golem as a soybean farmer now. Or Tyranitar. Okay, Pawmots and Eevreemon. It goes right there. There's actually the case to be had that you could put it maybe even a little bit above Gardevoir, not because it's better for heals, but because better synergy with a better island. But Lapis is also a really solid island, so that's not really something you need to consider. Between these guys, I'd really just rank them on proc value, and this is the proc value ranking. Cresselia is the only one that's a bit unique. Clodsire. Now, Clodsire is a cacao farmer at heart. It also produces some coffee, potentially early game but it's really bad for coffee. So really, it's more cacao that you'd be considering, and a lot of the same things that we said about Absol can be said about Clodsire, but it's got more synergies going for it. I feel like it can be generally good. Access to good cacao is generally good. In fact, you know what? After talking that, I talked myself into moving Absol up. I think Absol's still a little bit worse than Clodsire. It's got a worse main skill for ingredient specialists. Ingredient specialists struggle the most for energy because they don't typically sleep with you during the night if you're rotating the teams a lot, which means they can struggle for energy more. Absol having Charge Strength S isn't spending much time on the team to realistically, because it's an ingredient specialist, isn't going to really be getting that skill off all that much to give Snorlax the raw strength that it gives. So having that little extra energy is a bit nicer. So that's why I put Clodsire a little bit higher. And then, oh, that's the end, because I wasn't going to rank these two. These weren't supposed to be in the list. So that is the tier list. I'll zoom out a little bit so that you could theoretically take a full screenshot. This is my opinions on it. I've ranked them all. It's taken quite a while, over an hour and a half. I'll give it one last look over to see if there's anything that I think might need to be shifted around, and honestly, I feel pretty comfortable about a lot of these rankings. So, yeah, if you have enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Down in the description, we'll have a link to join the Discord. You can come join us, hang out, talk about all things Pokemon Sleep and the like. Huge thank you to all my channel members. It really means a lot to me that you guys want to show your support to me in that way. If you too want to become a channel member yourself, do note that I have no paid rewards for members, but the option is down below with the join button if you are financially capable of doing so and wanting to just show your support in that way. And as always, I thank you all for watching, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.